Welcome back to Ministry Maximizer podcast. I'm Carla Green, one of your hosts with David Maples. David, what happened to your hair?
Funny story. I was stuck out of state for a while, and I was down in Louisiana in the kind of the swamp. And maybe I shouldn't say swamp, but anyway. So I was down in Louisiana,
Did a
and I
gator
had
get it?
well, it would be a good story. So I was out on a swamp boat. Now the short answer is that I did this in high school. I had long hair in high school at one point in time, and then I cut it off and gave it to a charity. And I was down in Louisiana, and I'd been talking about doing this for a while, but I hadn't done it yet. And it was 100 degrees outside with 80% humidity. And I called my wife up one night and I said, I'm thinking about doing it. She said, yeah, you should go ahead and do it. And I was like, well, let me go look at it. So I went out that night and I looked up some different charities, and I found one called Children with Hair Loss. And I proceeded to braid my hair that night. I put rubber bands on each end of it, and I cut it all off. Now, I cut it, pretty short, but then I realized I'd done this at home. So there was no option but to get clippers out because it was absolutely terrible. And I just took it all off. So I'm kind of entering my Lex Luthor phase for a brief period of time here. I think I'll probably do this for a few months, and I'll probably grow it back out. But it's a good thing. If you get a chance, if anybody's listening to the podcast or does anything, there's several good charities out there. Children with Hair Loss is a good one. Wigs for Kids, good. Everybody's heard of Locks of Love. But basically, there's a lot of these charities that help kids, who have hair loss for lots of reasons, cancer treatment, that kind of thing. And for them, as an adult, it's very different. You kind of, people are shocked. Like, nobody recognizes me without my hair. I have to go introduce them and hand them a card and say, hey, by the way, do you remember me? Because they don't know who I am now. But with kids, it's a very polarizing thing. Because, as an adult, you get used to this stuff. But for a kid, it's very hard to go in there and now you look like everyone else. And you're also dealing with, like, if you have unexplained hair loss or you're dealing with cancer treatment, I think it's a very different thing. So I do difficult thing. And I think it's a useful thing. So it's like giving blood. If you can, you do. And so for me, I grew my hair out in the pandemic, enjoyed it for a while, and then it got really hot and hard to maintain. And I was like, someone else can benefit from this other than me. So I think the rumor is that they're going to be able to make 3 wigs out of my hair. So that's pretty cool.
That
So
is cool.
that
I
is a
thought we were
long explanation.
going, I thought we were going with the story that you're working so hard on this project, you were pulling your hair out. So you just went ahead and cut it
Okay,
out.
so Ministry Maximizer has been so stressful. No, I don't know how useful that is, but
No. Well, you look
yeah.
good regardless, hair or
Thanks.
hairless, and you're closer to God this way, right? That's what
Yeah,
my husband says.
I
All the hair
guess
closer to God.
the hair isn't like a tinfoil hat. It doesn't interfere with the Almighty, right?
I don't think so.
So, the funny thing about it is now that I have, like, even preparing my backdrop for today, I was like, I had to change something to the background because I had like some beige colored things, and I was like, that doesn't
Now
work.
you're just gonna blend in.
So yeah, it's totally a thing, just disappears. So, but no, I'm glad to be back. I was, literally out of pocket for about 7, 8 weeks, and ready to get this rolling. A lot of things we've done, a lot of stuff to Ministry Maximizer in the interim, though. So it's not like we sat idle on this. We put tooltips in there. We've got a lot of other options. We have a lot of more memorized things you can do to help prepare it to match your voice, or give you options really in your sermons to not just sermons, but anything you're doing to kind of save you time
Messages.
and energy. So pretty excited to show that
Sure.
to people too. So,
So
so what do we got cooking today, Carla?
we are doing addressing the critics. So we were not
Oof.
going to be critical about your hair, but it is interesting because I do think there is critics when it comes to this, even with, I've had some, and all criticism is good. I mean, not all criticism is good, but can be helpful because it kind of helps you think, why are you doing what you're doing? And it's how we take it. And so we welcome all of that. And one of the questions that comes up, and I don't know how you want to start into this, but is, why do we use Ministry Maximizer versus what's already out on the market? And so I thought maybe you would address that because you're more AI aware.
I mean, you can definitely you can grill me on these things if you want. So, I
Okay.
mean, and that's a very valid. I think it's a valid question. What's different, and we've had people say, "How is it different than ChatGPT?" And I'm
Mhm.
like, "How is it alike?"
Right.
and But that's of course, that's kind of that piece of it. You just kinda have to recognize that you're always gonna have to face. You're gonna have to always face that not just your critics, but when you're using any piece of software or any piece of technology, there are gonna be real challenges in how you use it, etcetera. How is it different than anything else out in the market you can use? So at the most basic level, it's one of the only AIs on the market, not AIs, it's one of the only platforms on the market that lets you use multiple types of, AI depending on what you wanna use. So for some people, they love Anthropic, they love Claude, which I think Anthropic just rebranded as Claude, which I heard about recently. But, some people love ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is kind of like a Coca-Cola, it is the name brand that everybody knows, okay?
Mhm,
It's got some things it does very well, but it's not great at everything. So with
mhm,
ours, we let you choose between Llama, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, which is Google's, and they're all good for different things. And you can kind of figure out kind of where your sweet spot is for how you want to use it and how you want to utilize it. I
mhm,
think that's thing one. May not matter to you. So let me go with the next one. The next one is that we keep your information private, proprietary. It's not being trained on and it's not being in the systems. And one of the things about it is because as we interface with the other models on the market, we make sure that your data stays your data. We don't train on it, we don't trade it, and we're not training next level of model on it. Now, again, should that matter? Well, first of all, it helps. Not saying that you should put personally identifiable information about your parishioners in there, but it helps provide a level of protection in case you accidentally do that. That's
mhm,
number but more importantly, I don't think your information necessarily should be going into training the new model, especially if it's your intellectual property. So if it's your sermon, if it's something you created in concert with communion with the Almighty, that is, that is literally between these four walls and God. It's your thing.
mhm,
So that is one of the big things about it. So you don't have to worry about this stuff being out there. The other thing about it that I think is actually important is that we have tools in there like the strategic planning for your
mhm,
church.
mhm,
You do not want to be putting that stuff in the open in another platform if it means that someone else can get access to that data.
mhm.
Okay. And that's one of the things. With ours, we don't do that. We gatekeep the data and we're not training on it. We're not looking at it or reviewing it.
Well, and I think the point too is that when you wanna release your data to the world, because I mean, churches, we want we want as much of the kingdom message out as possible, but we don't necessarily want our musings or our thoughts till they're formed and we're ready to put them out there to the world. And so this allows you to play without having, other things out there before you're ready to communicate it to the world.
Absolutely. And I think that is actually one of the things that honestly, that's probably one of the biggest things for me. Beyond just those really ton of top level things, the way we've built out, you can chat, so you can make it more like a chat GPT if you want to. You can communicate with it in a chat box just like you do with chat GPT, but you can say you want to talk to a different model, etc., that kind of thing. But ours in particular gives you the ability to, no matter which model you're using, to memorize certain information about you, your church, your ministry, etc., and have that stuff baked in, and then that can follow you at any given prompt. There's another thing we just introduced into it is a global kind of toggle. You can actually, so one of the problems or challenges with the AIs is that they're very sycophantic. No matter what you put in there, it tells you that this is a great idea. You should totally do this. We actually have a global toggle that you can choose to turn on in your account that actually directs the AIs to be much more neutral,
Mhm.
challenge you on more things, and be little less agreeable whatever you come up with. And
Right.
so I think that's part of it. Today it was kind of interesting. I showed Ministry Maximizer to somebody else in the mortgage business of all things because he was wondering about like software we'd built and anything else. And I showed him kind of a demo of it, and he's like, "Oh, this is really cool. I'd like to get in front of churches. I'd like to talk to people. Maybe I can introduce you to some people." And I was like, "I never thought about that. Like, there's a whole other group of people out there who might want to help spread the kingdom message, even if they are not
Right.
directly in the ministry." And
Right.
that was kind of a It was a really interesting moment for me today. So, but with that, there's literally a litany of things. So the privacy, how much time it can save you versus one of the other applications. And I think the last one, which probably is something we probably should highlight up front, is the learning curve is much, much, much
Mhm.
less. So you don't have to have everyone who is an AI technologist or an expert with about 15 minutes of one of our webinars, I think the average person working in the communications department of a church will get it and understand how to use our
Right,
application or platform. And you don't have to
right.
worry about that. So those are kind of the top 5 reasons I think about it. And those are things I think that's really, really interesting about it versus another piece of software. So yes,
Well,
those
I
are.
just heard a friend of mine who's a coach, like she's actually training people on how to use AI, not for churches, but how to ask it questions. And like that is what Ministry Maximizer does. It's already got questions that help you get to what you're wanting to glean quicker because the questions are already there. And then I think the other thing too that is on our hearts is that we want to build a community to where we're getting good ministry best practices going. I really want, to deliver you, David, as an AI expert to the church world. So we know going forward what we need to be aware of when AI is changing constantly and where the pitfalls are and have a voice that can be trusted in that arena as well. And so we want to do that through our online community, and make sure that even if there's things that we can tweak it to help make it better, we need you to be part of our community first before we start doing that. And then we can start building things more specifically that you are also looking for. It's great the way it is for sure, but we don't know everything of how it might be used in the future.
Well, I think there's gonna be a lot of options on there. And one of the things that's very interesting is that, we built this for Christian ministries. We didn't build it for anybody else.
Hmm.
And so it is very specifically aimed at that space in the market or in the theological market. And I think that that's one thing that makes us we're not trying to be an everyman for everything that ails you, right? If you run a whatever it is, this is not the tool for you. But if you're running a church and you're trying to, kind of increase access to the Christian ministry or increase reach, this is the tool that we built for you in particular.
And I
So
think it's the right time. Like, I feel like we're moving away from being so sermon message heavy
Mhm.
to being more to where we need to pivot to being way more relational in people's lives. And the way the life of church goes is just there's not enough time to build that relationship piece in. So if we can take pieces if we can take your message and repurpose it into all the different avenues you need it and free up time for you so you can get in front of people, like that's also what we're wanting to do and do it in a I was showing it to one person who's a pastor out in Colorado, and he's like, "I like that it's all together. Like, I like that all my chats are together. I like that, all the different things that I would possibly need are in one dashboard. And here, you're not going to find that with a spinoff of just one AI engine."
Well, you said that you had some people asking about different things. How I kind of I imagine the expansion of what we're doing here is that, for example, there are AI tools kind of built like this just for creating your podcast.
Mhm.
And we've talked about that. We actually already have a module built out that we can add into here that if you want to run a Christian-based podcast, etc., that we can put that module into Ministry Maximizer. And from our standpoint, I'm not wed to it looking a certain way.
Mhm.
I don't look, there are obviously different tiers or levels of access that you can provide in any kind of piece of software. But from my standpoint, I don't think I need to break that piece off and make it its own particular tool when I
Mhm.
can I can build it into the tool we've already got.
Right.
And that's another thing we did recently is that we're going to be putting this in now. So we built in the functionality for tooltips, which are going to be all over the application. But the idea with it is to just kind of deepen what you're doing there.
Mhm.
We got some other stuff that's coming soon. We're going to we've been working out a possibility of building a saved template. So for example, when you're in when you're going through your methodology or your particular branch of the kind of the Christian tree, you may have a Methodist background, or you may come from an evangelical standpoint, or a particular, like the Vineyard is a particular
Mhm,
set of churches. And so the idea with it is we've got those in there as options, and
mhm.
it pulls really well from that information within that particular, what's the
Denomination.
yeah, with the denomination. But it's, the idea is we wanna make that kinda, we wanna set a default button so it can just be like yours always goes to that as default, so you can actually skip that step. But, not there yet, we're working on that, but, that's definitely on the roadmap for what we're trying to do.
Mhm,
But to your point about the episode, it's just like anything else. This is a tool, and you do get criticism about these tools, like taking you away from the church. I think in the perfect world, this would literally be background noise. If Ministry Maximizer worked right, it would inform and help and expand what you could do in your church, but it would provide time for you to minister to people in your congregation, to go out and
mhm,
meet with them, to sit with people who are sick and ailing, to spend time with the kids in the youth group things, etc. So ultimately, my perfect vision for this tool is that it literally frees you up for spending that time for those real human connections, because that's where ministry really happens,
mhm,
is in that individual connection between individual members of the church.
mhm,
And I think this is what I really want. Look, I'd love for it to be in all these churches and be ubiquitous and everywhere, but I don't ever want it to be the focal point of whatever you're doing. Like, oh, we've got Ministry Maximizer. We're great. I think it's all about how does it help you engage.
mhm. And I
Those are
think
my
it'll be different for others, for everybody. I like that we named it Ministry Maximizer because I feel like it can take the thing that you're strong in and repurpose it in the things that you're not. And so you don't have to use if you're great at sermon outlines, you don't have to use that piece. You can use the how to make small group discussion tools out of it, or how to do blogs with it, or like even the exegesis part, like that to me is beautiful. The fact that I can throw in a verse and it creates the whole exegesis for me, so I don't have to go look up um, all the Strong's Concord. It does that for me. And so I can then get it all in one concise thing. And it doesn't matter whether I went to the website or went to a book and flipped open the page and wrote it all down. That to me that's not a spiritual walk for me to thumb through a reference. So I'm not breaking a spiritual rhythm. It's giving it to me quickly so I can study what it gives me. And so, and interact with the word. So somebody asked me what my favorite was. I think that one is like one of my favorites. And then also the parable creation, like creating stories, because a lot of times I don't necessarily have that story creation brain. I can put thoughts together, connect things, but I don't necessarily build a story out of it. I don't have that type of a thought to do it. Although it's helping me because I feel like it's an avenue into a brain cell I didn't have that it's kind of creating. But one of the critic things too is how does this take away from the Holy Spirit and how he wants to inform you. And I don't think it takes away. It can take away if you totally shut up talking to him. You know, it's how you interact. You still have to test the word. You still have to test what somebody's giving you. It's not any different than if a person with a prophetic voice would come and say, "Hey, Carla, I see this in your life and you should go do this." I'm not going to go do this until I test it, pray about it, and make sure that that's what the Holy Spirit's saying. And so I think it's just another point of information or something that you might not even have thought about, and the way it connects things together of communities I haven't thought about how to enter, or people groups, like age people groups, like, kids, how do I make this more kid friendly? Like something that would really strain my brain because I don't think in kid talk.
And that is, like, youth ministry is its own particular thing. People who are good at that, that's what they do.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, I don't. I feel like it's almost a separate gift, right? It's a
Right.
different thing that you have access to that you can really do in a different way.
Mhm.
I think that's my thoughts on it. And so with this, I think my favorite way for people to use it as is an interactive piece.
Mhm.
So drop your existing sermon in there and have it analyze it and have it help you strengthen places that maybe you're weak. Or
Mhm.
if you've had a sermon that you've gotten a lot of like criticism on or feedback because everybody's got an opinion Monday morning, you know? It was either a good sermon or it was not, right?
Right.
Or, yeah, I mean, I think the worst thing is to be meh. You know, you don't want to have a mess sermon. But no, I mean, so
Meh.
you'll get people who are like, well, I don't know that I liked your take on XYZ. And so the thing about those kind of things, it can help strengthen what you do. I think using it from a kind of way to sharpen the tools that you're using really could be helpful. Or if you think about it, like if you put in when you put in a sermon or have it create one if you want, and you have it as one of the follow-up questions. You've got a follow-up question in there is to like show potential pitfalls and outcomes. And maybe that's something you should be aware of. I've always felt when you give talks that your message is measured at the ear that is hearing you.
Uh-huh.
And I've always, as someone who's done public speaking, I've always thought that if people didn't get my message, it was my fault.
Uh-huh.
It's honestly, it's not their fault, it's my fault. If I talked at the wrong level for the audience, if I talked in a way and I typically have a problem doing that. I typically talk at a very high technological level. And so for me, building this out with the sermon analyzer has actually informed some other stuff I've built out for the other products I work on. Because see, for me, I need to know, am I talking to a whole bunch of blue collar construction guys about AI? That is a different talk fundamentally than somebody who's like a technocrat, you know, somebody who knows technology inside and out. And I think that's kind of the thing I think that can be very useful in Ministry Maximizer is you can look at who are you talking to in your congregation. Maybe the sermon is broadly for everybody in the congregation, but it's particularly for people in the congregation who are currently struggling with something or struggling with their faith.
Uh-huh.
And that's the person you need to reach that day. I
Mhm.
don't know that every time you deliver a mission, a, uh, uh, sermon, it's supposed to be like a 1 million mega power, you know, spotlight put on one person, right? And I also don't think it's necessarily just to be broadly for everybody. But I think a lot of times embedded in your mission or whatever you're saying, there's a particular person in your congregation or a particular group of people that you're trying to reach with it. I mean, I think that's what's beautiful about it. And then if you use it, back to the point, I think if you use it as a tool to challenge yourself, stop doing the thing where you give up at the first prompt. See how you can make it better. It's got
Mhm.
follow-up questions in there for a reason.
Okay.
Get it? Look, a lot of people will do it, and at first blush, you'll be like, oh, this is a really good offertory message, right? Really great. Struggle with it a little bit.
Mhm.
Look at it and say, well, how can I make it better? Because remember, these things they're just machines. And
Mhm.
as smart as they look, I'm going to say something here that's going to make people in the AI space very unhappy. They are not thinking machines.
Mhm.
Period. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. That is a fact. And it's
Mhm.
being borne out by technology. They are incredibly impressive in what they're doing, but they have no ability to learn beyond their training data. So the minute to explain this, when you're actually prompting them and talking to them, they're not learning from that individual chat you're giving. The machine is not getting smarter. Whereas
Mhm.
everything I say to you, Carla, or anybody in the audience, you're going to have ideas and you're going to build that into the world model of your life based on this conversation we just had. The machines don't do that. They
Mhm.
have amnesia. Every time you talk to them, it's like a brand new thing. They've never met you before.
Mhm.
So we've built some things in there to help provide some kind of pseudo memory, but it's really not there. So you have to realize when you get into a groove with this, you really do want to struggle with that. You will make it look out of the gate. Ministry Maximizer will be amazing. If you play with it just a little bit, you'll make things probably 3 to 4 times better.
Mhm. And I
So,
think, like, even if it could learn, we have to remember the kingdom is upside down thinking. So a lot of times, unless the upside down thinking, like everybody knows that if you whatever you reap, whatever you sow, you reap. That's an upside down kingdom message. And so AI would probably pick that up because that's one that's across the board. But there may be
mhm,
other things that God's showing you that the world doesn't get. Well, AI is not going to pull that back. Like there is one time that I tried to get it to say something about rest or about excellence and not about it being about performance, but about a sense of being and who you are connected with. And so, like, for example, like, we call in the England, London world, the kings and queens, you call them your excellence. Well, it's not because of what they do, it's because of who they are. And that's more of our kingdom mindset. It's more of who we are because of who we're associated with. but AI wanted it to be about what we do, and I could not get it
Ah.
to say that it's not about performance, it's about our connection with Jesus and our bloodline with him, and it would not do it, so I had to rewrite it. So there's going to be a few things, not a ton, but maybe more as we get into it, that you will have to break in and say, "Nope, that's not what I meant, I'm gonna have to rewrite that." But then, but then you can give it something better and have it rewrite it into something else. But that's one of the critic pitfalls is you don't want worldly you want kingdom messages. So, it may struggle at that higher level of thinking that what the Holy Spirit wants to show you, you're going to have to break down and write it yourself and then use it as a repurposing thing, not necessarily as a creation thing. And so you just have to be aware of that. But that's cool. That's the level at which you should be preaching, right? That it can get here, but what's the extra? But like I said, it can still repurpose it into other avenues.
Can we dive a little bit into so I want to talk a little bit about historical context because
Yeah.
there's a lot of anxiety right now regarding digital technology. And I think a lot of that is proper, but I think a lot of the anxiety kind of attaches itself to all the things, no matter what it is. Like social media is evil, right? You've heard people say things like that, right? Social media is undoubtedly has a lot of challenging elements on it, right? So does it. So does AI. We're hearing a lot of negative press about AI right now, but I feel like maybe this is the wrong term, but I feel like it right now in this current age right now, I think it feels like people are suffering from a kind of a historical amnesia, for
Mhm.
lack of a better term. It's like we forget about the way that okay, so this is where this comes from. Okay, so I have been Mike Duncan has an amazing, I think it's Mike Duncan, has an amazing series of podcasts. He's this historian guy. He's got, and I'm working through his podcast called The History of Rome right now. And it's important because it's like a 71-hour total series of podcasts. And each episode's like 30 minutes. And they take you through the beginning of the Roman Republic on through modern day. But Constantine came up, they talk about the early church. I mean, it's really, really interesting, but people forget about things that historically were okay. So, for example, early Christian people, like Paul, for example, right? Early on, people don't realize that, and I'm gonna nerd out about this just for a second if you'll indulge me. People don't understand how technology is different. We have books, we have the internet now, and all these other things, but it took a long time to get there. When this all originally happened, things were written on scrolls, and scrolls are like little, rolled up pieces of sheepskin, papyrus, what have you, and that's your one page thing, right? And then the next evolution of that was a thing called a codex. Okay. And a codex was literally like several pieces of paper you'd kind of tied together. It's a precursor to a book, right?
Okay.
Because books weren't things yet, right? And by the way, these were considered massive technological, like it seems obvious now, but you'd be like, man, what do you got with you there? And you've got a whole quiver, right, thing of like all these scrolls, right? And instead it's like that's really cumbersome, right? It's not very productive, doesn't really work for a while. So you get this codex, and it was a thing that the early Christians used, and it was championed by them. And this kind of came up in the codex a little bit about how this used to move things, and we talk about that. So and then we get, I mean, there's a lot of different technologies, but that's just one. And then we get to movable type. We get to the printing press, right? And how that is a massive thing. And in fact, I'll go ahead and say this is nothing against the Muslim faith, but the Ottoman Empire forbade Muslims to use printed type. Meanwhile, Christians in Europe are like, no, man, this is great. We can all have Bibles. This is amazing. And that was an amazing technology, not just for that, because that's where people were taught to read. A lot of people were illiterate, but now you have a Bible, and you actually, and so it's like double duty, right? It's amazing. It's not only that it's the word of God, but it is literally, you have this item now that people are learning how to read, and that starts transforming the world really, really, really quickly. And the Christians adopted that, and Christians, I will say, have adopted technology. I think about originally like radio type things, the church hour. They did broadcasting things in the 1900s. So there's a lot of different things. And so think about everything. Now, everything that happened in the previous 2,000 years, we've had as much of that happen in the last 50,
Right.
you know. radio, TV, internet, websites, email lists, digital platforms, podcasts now, and now we have AI. And I think, maybe it just feels like it's too much too fast, right? Maybe that's why. But a lot of people right now are just like, how can we possibly adapt this? The church has always done this.
Mhm.
How do we do this to get the message out? How do we do it to move it? And look, that's me nerding out. I like history, and I think it's really interesting. And I think it's really funny when you look at those things, and it's amazing that you can get the information out there. Think
Mhm.
about it. In 1200 AD, you've got these monks with like illuminated lettering. And by the way, it's beautiful, but nobody had a Bible in their house.
Mhm.
You couldn't read the word of God. And it was a major thing in the Reformation, right? The
Right.
Reformation, you can argue, would not have happened without the printing press. So,
Or without Luther saying, "Get it out of Latin and let's get it into some readable language."
you see, that's also like adoption of technology, right? If you
Right.
think about it, right? Why keep it in Latin? You keep it in Latin because the only people who can read it are the people who know Latin, which
Right.
most of us don't.
Mhm.
Nobody knew it back then except for the church and a lot
Mhm.
of people in power. And so I think it's impressive, but I think it also is, kind of a double-edged sword though. We have to recognize that any technology has to be prudently applied, and you
Mhm.
have to figure out how it works for you. Don't be a slave to the technology. Make it serve you or make it serve God's mission.
Right.
It's that kind of thing. So that's my soapbox for today.
Well, and I think there's the verse that keeps coming up that I feel like possibly the Holy Spirit's giving me is the whole idea that, the harvest is plentiful and the workers are few. And, God always makes a way where there seems to not be one. And so I think AI and used in the appropriate way is helping us with the harvest because if we can get to more people, that's always been the whole point of everything. Like the Bible getting to more people, Jesus coming when he did to get more to more people because the roads were in the right place. Like, so this is a tool because it's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of people that are hurting that need face to face. They don't necessarily, and I'm not putting down the sermons, like your weekly messages, but I can go on. There is enough sermons on YouTube that if nobody ever preached again, there's enough information out there, to be honest. And so, but there aren't enough people who are willing to get in front of people's faces and say, how can I help you? What is God doing with you today? And how can I help with that? And so, and I'm not like you can send the letters and emails or whatever about your sermons because I do think God's wanting to create more and I love to create messages and I love that. But at the same time, I always have to stop myself and say, what am I doing for the person who's right in front of me that needs a kind word, that needs a prayer, and if I don't have time, if I don't have space, if I don't have margin, and I'm so distracted with the busyness of church that I can't be the church, that's a problem. And the world is crying out for it. The world is crying out for us to be present and to host the presence in front of people so we can give them Jesus. And they can get it on YouTube with the sermon, but they can't get the touch of a person caring about them and showing what that really is like. And so Jesus preaching was part of what his ministry was. It wasn't all of his ministry. And so there was a lot of hands-on, getting in front of people and really showing them the kingdom, not just telling them about the kingdom.
I mean that's a very good point, and that kind of goes back to the saving yourself time to free yourself up to do other things. I like it because, and I'm not a preacher, but I like it because it allows me to see. I like the sermon generator just for myself a little bit because
Mhm.
you can mix a couple of different concepts together. And I know I keep going back to Ruth because I mentioned her in several of these several of these episodes. Dude, it's super cool. Anyway,
No.
what's that? I know it
That
totally
was
is.
that was completely awesome. And so
Well,
what
but
we're talking about is we were testing this out and I gave like as we always do, David was asking me like, let's give it something. And so I was giving it some mainstream things. And he's like, okay, that anybody could pull that back. Let's give it something weird. And so he gave it Ruth 3:7, which I had no idea what it was, and he didn't know it at the time either. I'm not that biblically literate to know what Ruth 3:7 is, but it ended up being something about Boaz just finishing with his drink and going back, and Ruth was waiting on the edge of his bed, and he's her kinsman redeemer, and it pulled in this whole church responsibility and but the other stuff that I had fed it about, us being the church and sons and daughters, and it pulled in how we're supposed to be kinsmen redeemers even in the dark of night when people aren't watching, and it was like it was really beautiful the way it tied it together, and it got us, we both were kinda like, "This is so exciting," and it's kind of, I mean, like, every time we have these talks, it always just kinda, like, makes me excited about the word and what God's doing and how even AI is putting it together. And my husband goes, "How can it do this?" when he looks at the stuff that I give him, and I said, "Because AI has read its Bible. AI has read commentary. AI, like, it can handle more information than we can, and so why not use it to cross-pollinate that
I
way?" Just some of the stuff that I've seen even when I let other people create, it's just so much fun, to be honest. It's a
I
fun tool.
it's my from my standpoint, I think it's so one of the hardest things for me is when I okay, this sounds really bad, but when you go into the sermon, or you go into the church and it's the same message, and I'm not saying that I don't wanna I am gonna go ahead and say it. I don't wanna go in and hear the same sermon I've heard 25 times before. I
Mhm,
could probably give that sermon. And the
mhm,
reality of it is that so and look, for somebody who doesn't know, and it's not just for me, and I know I'm being very selfish, but when I go in and hear something different, that's when the sermon resonates with me.
mhm,
When I hear about how it affected somebody in the community, when I hear those kind of things are what makes it really interesting for me. And so when you go in and bring things together in a way, kind of cross mixing something in a way that I haven't heard before. Now, the tool won't do this just on its own. It needs you.
right,
It needs you to be involved with it. You have to give it the seeds, the
mhm,
inspiration of what you want to look at. And then you need to challenge it because it'll come up with something and you have to look at it and say, does this really jive? Does this group? Are these things together in the same story? And I think I think it's exciting, right? Because I think you could probably cross mix or create sermons that have never been given before, ever.
mhm,
And so for me, that is a way to deepen exploration of the word in a way that's maybe not been done before.
mhm,
Now, I think we need to make sure it doesn't turn into like technological idolatry or something like that, right? I'm just
right,
because you got to remember, it needs to be a tool. It's how can our church use this tool?
mhm,
Not how do we become disciples of this tool and become completely dependent on it. So I think it's just for me, it's a way to increase or deepen those things. Even there, you could have someone who's not just who is preparing sermons or what have you, or preparing their offertory, and you can have it challenge you. You can have
mhm,
it literally deepen your understanding of stuff, and you can actually treat it kind of like, for lack of a better terms, a devil's advocate. You
mhm,
know, poke holes in my sermon. Tell me what's wrong with it. Tell me what's not working correctly.
mhm.
And it'll absolutely challenge you if you ask it to do it. And I think that's kind of exciting as well. I think that's totally something that is how it should work.
And maybe I need to talk to you about this offline, but I was just thinking, like, in the profile piece of it that we have, is there any way that we could create, um, for lack of a better term, tars who are critics in our church that we know, like, so different personalities. Like, I know Bob will always ask me about this or always be like, so maybe there's 4 or 5 personalities that always kind of come up and they always have something that they are wanting to address. Maybe he's more critical or or maybe he's overly positive and always wants to see something rosy. Like, so can he come in and be a critic in my analyzer? And
Mm.
how would Bob handle this? Or, maybe, Paula
The
is always political, and there's gotta be a political bent to it, and what is she going to how's this gonna impact her? So I'm just wondering, is there, like, critic avatars that we could create at some point that
yeah,
we give them personality of
we totally we could actually do that and either make it a follow-up or make it part of a prompt or part of a we call them prompts, y'all, but they're it's a little that's like calling a spaceship a mode of transportation. It's it's like, well,
well, it is.
it is, but it's
Not
not like I
available to
mean,
everyone, but it is.
it's like, well, bike, car, boat, plane, train, rocket ship, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things. But for lack of a better term, internally we call them the prompts. We could totally make it part of that process. And we just need to come up with what those things look like. We could even set it up. This is actually probably more advanced. We could set it up so that we'd have to train somebody on how to build it.
Mhm,
It may just be, you might be right. Maybe we just supply like 4 or 5 of those
mhm,
that they could do. And we just figure out if like, they're basically critics
mhm,
or critique what I just came up with through the lens of XYZ person,
mhm.
and we could totally do that. And we could just make it a follow-up thing that it
Right.
literally is something on a follow-up. By the way, for those of you listening, the way our system is set up is that you have the initial outcome of the entire thing that you want to create. And then there are these follow-up options.
Mhm.
And the follow-up option could be a sandbox where you type in whatever you want, or we have, in some cases, we have preloaded like 30 of these things or 20 of these things, depending on what it is. Not to overload you, but that way you have different options to say, oh, do this. Like if you have your thing and you need it translated into Spanish, you just press the button and say go. So, because you don't need to give it the entire message on how to do this and make sure it's correct.
Right.
So we don't need
2 of
that.
my
Think
favorites
about
are
that.
the objection, like, what are the objections I'll get, and then also make this for kids. And so some of the kids ones are so incredibly cute, what they come back with, because 'cause they'll give you activities and yeah, and just very clever things that my brain doesn't go towards. And then I
I mean,
get excited about like, "Man, I wanna give this to kids." Like, I wanna go teach kids.
yeah, funny enough, we're sitting here recording this podcast, and my father just called me because he keeps asking me about. He's asked several times about, using this in the Bible study thing that he runs every Sunday, and it's kind of funny because it's like because he is the most. I don't know. He's that guy who's worried that you get a Nest thermostat, one of the smart thermostats. He's worried it's going to start infiltrating your house and interrogating the other appliances and building up an army against you or something. He's asked me before. He's like, "What if someone hacks my thermostat?" And I was like, "Oh golly, where do I start here?" But
The worst thing
that's
it could do, it'd get hotter or get colder.
yeah, I know, but it's not even hacking a thermostat at DEF CON, the hackers convention in Vegas, is a very particularly set of criteria. It's not.
At a breakout session at the HackerCon.
Yeah, no, it is. It actually is. It's like
Is it?
hack the kitchen appliance, right? But you got to realize you would have to get into it, get on your network, be able to get in through your router. There's all these things that are in the
Right.
way. Anyway,
Go change your password, dad, it'll be fine.
yeah, change, yeah, Dad, please change your password, or do me a favor, just put the laptop back in a box and just ship it somewhere,
That's right.
anywhere else.
Anywhere else.
So no,
So,
I'm kidding. I'm
that's
I'm being
funny.
harsh, but it is interesting because you do have this kind of and I will say, you're gonna have people in the congregation who, once they start knowing you're using different technology things, they're either think it's gonna amazing. 5% of no matter what is it, 5% of people on either end, they either love or hate whatever you do.
Right.
So my hair is off my head. 5% of people will be like, "That's amazing. It's so much nicer now." I'm like, "Okay, thanks. You hated my long hair." And then 5% of it, no, "Oh, I can't believe you did that. That's terrible. You cut your hair off, right?" And then most people are just kind of like, "Meh, looks all right. You're good." You
Yeah.
know?
It
But you
doesn't
gotta
impact
be
you
careful
one
you
way or
don't
the
listen
other.
to the squeaky people out there who kind of
Run your
think.
life. And I think that's part of the problem that we're coming into with the social media generation is that we are wanting likes. And so it's feeding into that fear of man instead of fear of God kind of concept. And so whatever you do with Ministry Maximizer, like if this is listen to what God's telling you to do. If this is something that he's saying, yes, this will help you, like pray about it. We don't have any worry about if it's not for you and God doesn't want you to use it because you're at a different point in your life, then don't use it. But if this is something that is going forward, then definitely sign up. I did want to address the Bible study thing. I also lead a business Bible study once a month. And
Interesting.
when I was when we were releasing Ministry Maximizer, I had my group actually fill out the prompt for the small group discussion, and we built a our next session on on what they said. And it was very clever. It was good. And, I went back after we did it and just said, make it more practical and add some fun elements. And it was probably the most fun. I mean, I've been doing it for 3 years, and that was probably the most fun that we had. And I'm usually pretty good at it. And so it's like going, wow, you kind of kicked my butt, AI. It's like, well done. So, but just the added elements of taking a verse and like I think it was the woman who was being stoned for adultery. and they were wanting her to be stoned, and, like, we just did like, it even suggested doing a a T chart where, like, how did the Pharisees act versus how did Jesus act, and, like, how does that translate into your work of how do you judge
Hmm.
people? Like, at the beginning, it asks, like, the icebreaker was to write a headline for, a short headline that somebody might misconstrue as something negative, like, "She left early again for work," and so maybe it was, she had to go to a doctor's appointment or something, and so that's the whole story. So, we had so much fun with the elements that I didn't have time to think about or would have taken the time, and it really impacted our lesson. And so, yes, the Bible study thing, like if you're leading a Bible study, if you're like going, I am not a pastor and this is not for me, but I do lead a Bible study, that piece of it's amazing too. Like it can help create content for you. And then you just go study what it gives you. Cause you could even ask it after it brings back like here's your here's your class because you I think it's like is it 45 minutes, is it an hour, is it 90 minutes, and then you can even say, so how do I prepare for this, and it will bring back again, how do you get prepared as the leader for this lesson. So it's brilliant in that, and it's fresh and new and different as well.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think it's a cool tool. I mean, I think it is. I think no matter what tool you're using in your ministry, there's certain things you should do for like, you got to figure out like how you're going to put the tools into your organization. And it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be a crazy 500-point checklist, whatever you're doing it, but you want to have a baseline before you put any tool in there. Like, how do you currently do these things?
Hmm.
Because one of the challenges with AI, and you've heard people saying it, and this is the part I don't get. I have people, I've actually got like 3 people who hit me up like today or yesterday or over the weekend that they wanna know about me coming into their business and helping implement AI. And there's that report from MIT 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it said that 95% of businesses don't have a plan to implement AI effectively in their business. And I'm scratching my head, like, literally, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, how is that real? How is it that bad at these organizations? And I think it's for a lot of people, just like with churches, they've thought, oh, we'll just grab this new shiny thing and put it in our church or whatever it is. There are very obvious. So come to one of the webinars or sign up for
Hmm.
Ministry Maximizer and we'll show you guys how to put it in there. But the failure rate of people implementing this in their ministry should be somewhere around the less than 1% because you didn't try
Hmm.
level. It should not be something crazy like 95%. And I think for a lot of people, it's you look at, what's the current church's technological state. So for like the strategy thing about growing your ministry, that's one of the big things we have in there, right? We have an entire thing to build your roadmap. Heck, that would save most ministers or planners for churches, I don't know, months of time
Months.
particularly.
Hmm.
And use that and you can actually use it to help assess like weaknesses in your church, like some challenges. I don't like the term weakness. I like the term challenge because a weakness makes it sound like it's structural or fundamental. I think
Hmm.
ultimately you can turn any of those things around or mitigate the challenge if you want to do it. But if you get a baseline of where you're at technologically in the church, and this is a pretty inexpensive thing. I mean, people are spending $100 a month or something like
Right.
that on something like this tool and, but, for most churches, it's not just very affordable, but you can look and say, what is your currently technological state? Like, how are you going to use this stuff? And then all you need to do is find a thing that's going to save you 5, 10 hours a week. And
Hmm.
it not just makes sense, it makes like a stupid amount of sense.
Hmm.
But you want to figure out like what's your technological adoption rate?
Hmm.
And it can help catapult everything else you're doing.
Right.
So it's got a thing to help. Okay, so you have a problem with social media in your church. Your communication people are challenged on it. Now, just because somebody thinks social media is fun does not mean it's effective.
Hmm.
You want to look and say, how is this helping us expand the mission of our church? A ministry maximizer can help you figure out those next steps, can help you get a roadmap and a plan for doing that. But you want to have a baseline of where you're at now. So, for example, just an example, you're going to start using Ministry Maximizer to help plan out or put together your social media pieces of content. Great. Get your baseline. How
Hmm.
many people currently look at your stuff? How many people currently engage with it? How many people are following the church? And you just write those down on a napkin or a piece of paper or a spreadsheet or wherever you want to put it, but put it somewhere and then start using the tool and measure how those things measurably improve over the next 6 weeks. And that's valuable. When you're looking at saving time in your ministry, find out like, okay, how much time are you spending on X right now? You probably know. If sermons are a challenge for you, maybe you love doing it. So keep doing that, right? But
Mhm.
I think you want to tie it to the outcome. So you say, okay, cool. I'm going to use it to help prepare this. And now I'm saving 20 hours a month. And then the outcome is I spent 12 more hours meeting with parishioners. I did the 6 other hours of doing church financial stuff that I hate doing and I don't like doing, right? But I was able to get to that now. And I had 2 hours to rest and relax and reflect and pray. Valuable. And I think that's how I'd like to see people using these tools. I think they should do that. And, um, but then you can ask your questions. You can do that kind of what do you call it in business? It's like a okay, so it'd be like a mission alignment framework in like a church, probably.
Uh,
It's like in business, it'd be like a purpose alignment. Like you have to figure what you're doing. So how much does it cost? Does it fit our budget and does it provide real value? Is it convenient? Is it easy to use for us? I think it checks all those boxes. And does it have actually features that we need to accomplish our goal? And if there's a feature you want and you're a subscriber, you can request it. Just like tonight, recording this podcast, or today, recording this podcast. Carla said, I don't remember what it was. I'll have to go back and listen to it again. You had this idea for,
avatars,
yeah, the avatars, right?
the
So
avatar critics.
so we can add that in. We could have that in here in a couple weeks. And so we've been adding stuff. And like right now, already feedback from both users and people who we've shown the application to have helped us add in more things because we are doing this to support the ministry. So we're here to serve that goal.
Mhm.
So if there's things it needs to have, we need to know. Use it and then let us know. And then we need feedback. When we put a new feature in, we need feedback on that because we need to
Yep.
know how you like it. One other thing I can promise about our software is that we will try as long as possible when we put a new version of the dashboard or an upgraded user interface or what have you in it, we will try to always give people a very long time window to adopt.
Mhm.
This is not what your accounting software says, hey, we're doing this. And 3 weeks later, you wake up one morning and you cannot go back to the old version and
Right.
you're spending extra time and you're making mistakes. So our goal is to make something that is usable for you, etc.
Mhm.
And then there are ways in there to keep your old chats, your old things. You can asterisk and star those things and keep those things for a long time ago, for a long time moving forward. Sorry, I kind of went off on a big tangent here, but those are things I think that are
No,
important.
yeah, and we wanna, just invite you all in to be part of our Ministry Maximizer community, and so you can also be our cheerleader and our critic.
Yeah. No, I mean that's what I want. And then I want to know from you all out there, either you can comment on this episode or you can email us at Ministry Maximizer and let us know if this gave you any ideas. I hope this gives you some ideas. And look, if you don't use Ministry Maximizer, go find a tool. I think you'll find that this tool is
Mhm.
totally worth your time.
Mhm.
But we do webinars every Thursday at not every Thursday, but like every other Thursday at like 11:30. We kind of do those. I think the next one's coming up in a couple weeks. And we do those so people can at least see kind of how it actually this is not just to just say, hey, here's the thing we want to sell you. It's how does this actually work for us? And then at the same time, we want to know what's working for you in your congregation. I mean, we do want to know
Mhm.
from our standpoint, like what else can we add in here to make this work better for you and your ministry?
Yeah, so
So
if you wanna sign up for one of our webinars, you can just go to ministrymaximizer.com and, sign up. I think it's 1st and 3rd Thursdays, and
yeah.
so, is when you'll find that. So, yeah, we'd love to all you have to do is just let us know so we can send you a link, and you can hop on, invite your friends and other ministry leaders.
And we can promise it'll actually be run by us because we're actually humans in this thing. So we want to let people know that we're not
We
we're
have a
not having
human tell that we need to, uh
well, I'm gonna glitch again and whatever it is, losing yeah, I need more motor oil or something. I don't know. That sounds terrible. How do you power these machines? Well, like in the age of and if you're out there listening, so we're recording this on October 6th, 2025, and Sora 2 just dropped last week. And there's a lot of people, even people in my own organization asking like, "Oh, wow, this is really amazing." But it is if you haven't gotten the time to spend time looking at those things, it is really we've entered kind of the crazy future. Like people are in there and they're basically whatever I said in this podcast, I could actually put The Rock in saying it instead of me.
Mm.
And, it's
He
it's a
was bald.
little what's that?
He too is bald.
Yes, and actually, that's it. I'll do a oh, man. So should we
Bald
do
bald.
a promo for this with The Rock introducing us? Should we totally do
Would we
that?
get in trouble for that? I think.
Probably, but I mean, heck, why not, right? I don't know. It's one of these things. I could make
Maybe we
myself a
should do something from the faith, like, Billy Graham or somebody that's
Billy Graham.
gone that we know
Yeah,
that it's
they wouldn't
them.
do yeah, we could do that. I mean, watch us do this and we get a thing from Billy Graham's church. A cease
You
and
know?
desist. Do
Yeah.
not use us.
Yeah, we don't wanna be yeah.
Well, we could totally do it and do it with a watermark and say it's in good faith, good fun.
Good faith. I'm not even sure we could say good faith.
No, we can't say it's in good faith. We'll say it's in good fun. So maybe we should do that. We're gonna make a Billy Graham version of us talking about Ministry Maximizer. We'll have Billy Graham talking about I don't know whatever we talk in this podcast. So maybe it sounds. I mean, why not? We'll make it funny. We will do it in a respectful manner.
Somebody that couldn't, sue us, like Martin Luther or something. Maybe we need to go
I mean,
further.
Martin Luther's easy, except what is he gonna speak German? I guess. Uh, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna record it right now. It's gonna be like, "Hi, I'm Martin Luther, and I want to talk to you about, gee, I wish I'd had Ministry Maximizer in
That's right.
1535."
That's right.
I should look and see, when did Martin Luther live? Martin Luther live. Let me look.
Should we take it?
1535. He's still alive. 46 he dies. So I'm gonna totally. So I need an older Martin Luther who talks
Instead of
about
his
this in
instead of his
1535.
99 thesis, it's a 100 thesis now because 'cause we're putting Ministry Maximizer
Yes,
right up
Ministry
to the door.
Maximizer is something. If I could nail this to the door of a church right now, Ministry Maximizer would be the next thesis on there. So,
Exactly. Look at
oh
us. We're
golly.
historically relevant.
Yes, I could do that. I still like the Billy Graham idea. I mean, look, if they sue us, they'll sue us, but I don't think they'd probably just tell us to take it down. I don't know. I mean, what are we gonna do? I think we should totally do it. I think we should totally do it. Look, we'll put a conversation between Billy Graham and Martin Luther.
Yeah,
That would
there
be
we
interesting. I don't know how
yes.
he'd feel about that.
I
Come
think
on, that
maybe
would be cool.
yeah.
That'd
Well,
be
there
really cool.
I don't think Billy Graham would have trouble with it. I mean, I don't
No.
know Graham, but why would that be a problem?
No, I mean, if you could talk to look, everybody, if you asked any biblical scholar who they want to talk to, the short answer is Jesus, but, I mean, that's easy. But,
But
like,
you can talk to him now.
I wanna have you see, like, who would you talk to in the Bible? Like, who would you wanna
Who
go
would I
talk
talk
to?
to in the Bible? I would probably say, um, one of the disciples or Paul, probably Paul, and then maybe King David or Solomon.
Got it? I
Oh, I'd
wanna
maybe
talk
talk to a woman like Esther or Ruth, come on.
Yeah, you could totally do that.
Or Deborah, really. Let's talk about Deborah because, like, she's this amazing prophet, judge, and there's, like, 2 verses. Like, I wanna know why she didn't get more because there's gotta be more to her life than just those 2 verses or however many verses there were.
Is there any other historical stuff about Deborah?
I'm not sure.
I wonder if we could create some video content around this stuff on social media. Like with dude, we could totally create some really cool stuff right now. Historically, maybe not accurate, but based on like conversations they might have had, right?
Right.
Dude, we could create some really cool biblical stuff. Like I've got to show you some of the stuff we've got. By the way, any of you out there, if you come to one of our webinars too, I'll tell you about all this stuff if you want to know about
Yeah.
it. But I don't know. I think about like it sounds kind of bad. It's like one of the Roman centurions when they're crucifying Christ. Like, what do you really
Mhm.
think about this? Because all these guys weren't totally gung ho about this, right?
No, no. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the centurion who's, who Jesus healed his slave, like, he wouldn't be.
Yeah, but I mean that's the whole thing, right? It's like if you could be a fly on the wall at this time, right? Or
Right,
or like when the temple falls
right.
in Jerusalem. Like there's so many amazing historical events that we could and all we have. So a lot of biblical stuff. Like we've got the gospels and then there's some like Josephus, there's a few Romans who wrote about what was
Mhm,
going on in Judea at the time, right? But it's
mhm.
like, and so like, look, I'm into this history of Rome thing right now because it is very interesting because Judea is a very big crossroads. There's a lot of there's some stuff going on there, but it's really interesting how all this stuff works into the machinations of the emperors and things like that. And it's just I just think this stuff's really interesting. But to go back and talk to people in the Bible, like what's like a lesser known apostle? Like what are they thinking, you know?
Yeah. Or Barnabas, like, I feel like even Barnabas, who was the encourager and, like,
Yeah.
how he walked with people and encouraged them and, he didn't get a lot of time in the Bible, I'd wanna know about that. So, but yeah.
There's a lot of really cool stuff. I think there's probably a lot of cool stuff we can explore with this, and maybe we should for Ministry Maximizers, like promotional stuff. And we could. I don't know the Deborah stuff. Is there any other? That would be really interesting to know kind of what those communications would have been.
Yeah. Or I mean, there's a lot of women that are mentioned in the Bible that I think had huge roles that don't really get a huge play. Like Lydia or Priscilla in the New Testament, who were probably pastors in their town because they had house churches.
Yeah,
And, or, Joanna, the ones that financed Jesus's ministry. Like, what was that like? Like, you know. So yeah, so there's a lot. There's a lot
I
of
don't know. This is kind of
Bible.
exciting because now I'm thinking about like, are there ways we could explore this? I don't know. Maybe those would be ways we talk about. And I know we're boring. Anybody in the audience right now who's still listening is like, what are we? They're just talking about.
Oh, that's right. Well, no, we do this. Like we have like this is where our ideas come from.
Yeah. No,
Because
but I was thinking,
I think
yeah,
it's important, like, there's so much out there that we could be doing, like, I could get off, now and go watch TV and watch some rerun that I've already probably watched of something but to think about, like, to wonder about the characters and, have AI kinda build what's out there and do study about it, like, why not? Like, why not do more of that? I mean, there's people who've written books on characters and expounded on them and didn't really have more than just the research or what they felt like the Holy Spirit was saying to them or made it more of a novel.
so I want to share something with you. Have you seen the Lego Bible?
So, okay, our other co-host is MIA.
What's that?
I said our other co-host is MIA.
It's called the Brick Bible,
Oh, nice.
the New
Does it
Testament.
fall apart when you pick it up?
No, they made the entire New Testament as Lego characters, like a graphic novel.
That is so cool.
And I got this years ago because I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? So it's the New Testament, right? And it's not all of the scripture, but it's a lot of it. Like easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. So
Mhm.
it is literally that,
Yeah.
someone did that. But the thing that's crazy about it, I was like, it's kind of a really cool way. I mean, maybe the kids wouldn't think it's cool now because this is probably like 10 years old, but it was a way to make things more accessible,
Mhm.
to kids, and I thought that was really a neat thing, and so I bought it years ago, and it's just I thought it was a really cool thing, and so if you wanna go buy it, I'm sure it's available on Amazon or something.
Well, and actually, kids' Bibles, there's a beginner Bible that I have that's like it pretty much goes through the Bible, but it tells how all the stories end up like that connect to Jesus. And I always point that Bible to new Christians because if you haven't been raised in the church, you don't know the stories, you want to catch up with knowing some of that. Reading that children's Bible is probably one of the best ways of getting a better grip on biblical stories, having some reference when preachers are talking. And so I highly recommend a children's Bible for new Christians or even for Christians who haven't really been in the Bible because that will give you a quicker snapshot of it than when you go back and read it, you'll have context for what you're reading.
Very, very
That's
cool.
just a freebie on this podcast.
So, we are promoting other things on the pod, none of which we have any relation to at all, but so so what we're going to talk about on the next episode is that we've talked a little bit about critical stuff. We'll probably dive a little bit more into that, and then we're going to talk about smart outreach using data analytics, kind of looking in your own database at your church, looking at what your data is on your parishioners and things like that, because we think that we've talked about this a little bit, but there's a lot of information in there that can help improve your church right now. If you're financially struggling, how have you engaged the people in your church?
Mhm,
It's not just about money, right? It's about engagement.
mhm,
Because if they're engaged, they give.
mhm.
unless something else is happening in the world, they give. When you haven't engaged them, that's when things start to fall off. And usually that is very apparent in your church roles.
Mhm.
How have you reached out to the people in your church? How have you ministered to them, et cetera? So we're going to discuss that a little bit more about how you can use data analytics, how you can use that ethically, and look at doing other things. And by the way, just so you can do this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pitch Carla for a second here. Activate the Church is her not for profit. And she actually provides consulting for churches on how they can increase their reach and their efficacy. And she actually takes kind of a top down look and a holistic look, for lack of a better term, and what you can do more effectively in your church.
Okay.
And everything from you're having trouble getting people to give, you're having trouble putting butts in pews, you're having trouble figuring out like where do you expand next? Do you get a
Mm.
second location or do you expand the current whatever the thing is called? You add pews, I don't know. Do you
Oh,
expand the whatever it is?
the
Those
current
things.
facility?
Yeah, do you increase the size of your facility? Do you add on rooms for Sunday schools, or do you open another church somewhere else? And
Mhm.
the answer is maybe both. But that's stuff that Carla does. So I just wanted to kind of give her a plug, and she's been so gracious to help start this entire thing with me. It's been kind of a crazy journey, and we've just now, like I said, we just launched pretty recently. And
Mhm.
it's cool. It's exciting. It's exciting times to be involved in this stuff. So, but with that, I think that brings us to the end of the episode. Do you have anything
Yes.
else you'd like to add, Carla?
No, just thank you for all of that, um, and I do think it's time to start looking at how we look at our churches, and there's just been an article out, I we probably need to put it in the comments about how the generation under the millennials are coming back to church, and
Yeah. Yeah,
in
they
more
are.
structured church, and are you ready for it? Like, are you ready to receive what's coming to you? And I think Ministry Maximizer is one way, but I think there might be others too. And it's time for us to take a hard look at, are we prepared for the harvest coming to us in our churches, to meet the needs of what they've been going through in their young lives? And we have a lot of work to do.
So the question is, do you have the riz to engage the new kids, or is your entire ministry sus? So we should uh
I'm too old for that language. I'm sure it means something to somebody.
so yeah. Yes. By the way, if you're one of those members out there, let us know how much it made you cringe or how cringe that was. I'm sorry, I'm trying to use the right language to do this. I am learning. There's like 100 different words I have to learn now.
Don't you
So
just shorten them like deaf?
no, it's not. I mean, Riz is charisma. Means suspicious, but like cap and no cap, there's
Can I
some of
just say
them are
no?
shortened.
Because words create worlds, and those aren't creating much world.
Yeah. Well, like, but Carla, that's pretty funny. So I'm dead. And that's it just it's interesting stuff.
It
Ministry
is.
Maximizer can help you communicate with them. You can go put it in Ministry Maximizer and say, a whole bunch of Gen Z people came to my church and said the following. Just
Right.
record it and feed it
Can you
in and
can
just say,
you
what did this
translate it
mean?
into the
You
shortened
translate.
language?
Yeah, we should come up with a translation app. The new AirPods
Yes,
have real time translation. We should have them translation Gen Z. There's probably a product for that we just came up with. So
exactly.
you're welcome if you're listening to the pod. All right.
That's right,
S-
and thank you for the time that you have
Yeah.
given us,
Yes.
that we have
So
rambled.
everyone else out there, I'm sure we'll get tons of bad comments. Give us 3 stars and tell us about how bad this podcast was.
It was a critic one.
Yeah, totally. I'm totally down for it. How we're just barely average. But with that, thank you for spending your time with us today. We really appreciate you being here. Next week, like the next episode, we will talk more about data analytics and outreach in your community, about how to use it ethically, ways to go about doing it. And for a lot of people, that episode's going to meet you where you're at. You could be an advanced ministry that has very advanced analytics, or you might have everything in a shoebox, or you might have a small ministry where everything is maybe not in a shoebox, but everything's written in a spiral bound notebook. Step one, we need to digitize that. But we will talk more about that.
Throw it in the
And
scanner. It's
yeah,
done.
it totally is. Well, we've got ways to possibly do that in Ministry Maximizer. So
Okay.
I haven't talked about that, but I've got some things I've built recently that we're going to put in
Awesome.
there. So cool stuff. Well, with that, thank you very much for listening. I'm David.
And I'm Carla.
Go out there and be awesome, and let's engage those ministries.
See ya.
Hey everyone, it's the producer here. Thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, be sure to check out ministrymaximizer.com. Transform your ministry with AI tools that help you craft your sermons, increase outreach, and spread the good news of the kingdom. Sign up today at ministrymaximizer.com. That's ministrymaximizer.com.